Okay, here we go. The first of many videos on four-voice part writing. I want to summarize a little bit of what I talked about last week with four-voice writing. I'm going to start in the key of C major. I'm going to take a 1 chord, and I'm going to voice this chord in bass, tenor, alto, and soprano. First thing to notice is that we have soprano and alto on the same staff. The up stems are for soprano, the down stems for alto. Same thing with tenor and bass. Next thing we want to think about is this is a 1 chord, which is a triad, which in the key of C is C, E, G, but there are 4 voices. For right now, we're going to say that we're going to double the root of the chord. So in 4 voices, we're going to want 2 C's, an E, and a G. I'm writing these down here to give you something to have a record of what I'm talking about, but I would recommend you don't do this. Do this in your head because this will become a crutch which will hold you back. Okay, so we have 2 C's, an E, and a G, and you can see here I've got a root, root, third, and a fifth. Okay, a couple of other things you want to think about. You want to have good spacing so that it sounds good. And what makes this sound good is no more than an octave between soprano and alto, no more than an octave between alto and tenor. We don't care about the distance between tenor and bass. But the spacing of the upper voices, just don't have them spread too far apart. You want a nice blended sound. The last thing we want to think about in voicing a single chord is the range of each voice. So for soprano, generally you want it to be from middle C to this G. So this is C4 to G5. For alto, the G below middle C to this C. So that is G3 to C5. For tenor, the range is roughly this C to this G. This is C3 to G4. And finally for the bass, we have E to C, and this is E2 to, sorry, this is a wrong note, to C4. Okay, so if you look at this first chord, you can see we have proper doubling. Okay, right now we're doubling the root. There's 2 roots, a third and a fifth. All of the other notes are present. You can see the spacing is good because this is less than an octave between these two, less than an octave here. You can see this soprano note is in the middle of the soprano range. The alto note is in the alto range, tenor, and bass. This is a well-doubled chord. I want to voice this chord a couple of additional ways, just to show you different things we could do with it. Okay. Do you see how here in this chord we could fit a G in there? G is a chord tone. In between these two, we could have a C in there. So these are spaced out. They're not as close as possible. That is called open voicing. Okay, open voicing means not as close together as possible for the upper 3 voices. If we want a close voicing of this chord, we're going to have to do this. If we do a C here, for the soprano, the alto is going to have to be this G, the very next closest chord tone. And the tenor would have to be this E very next chord tone. And then the bass can actually be lower or it can be up high. This criteria applies to the upper three voices. Okay, so the bass could be here, and then these three would be clustered together into an open position. Any note can be on top. I'm going to do a C, E with a third on top, C, and a G. Okay, so here we've got C and E. We still need a C, two C's, an E, and a G. That's one possibility. Here's C and G. We're going to need another C, and we're going to need an E. I'm going to put my C, second C here, and then the E and the tenor is going to have to be here. If I had done it down here, that would have been too much space. Okay, so since these are spread so far apart, we kind of have to do the voicing that way. That is the voicing of a single chord. There was an assignment in which we you were given two versions of the same chord. I'll do one of those just for kicks. So say we're in the key of B flat, and we have the 5 chord. Okay, so in the key of B flat, 5th note of the scale is F, and I'm going to do 2 5 chords. I'm going to do a 5 chord and repeat it. And then here I'm going to have the upper voice, the soprano, move from 3 to 5. Okay, so first of all, let's get this chord completed. We have F, A. I'm going to take an F here and a C here. So we have 2 Fs, an A, and a C. Nicely spaced within ranges. Okay, so now we're going to this chord. We know we're still going to need 2 Fs, an A, and a C. A couple different things you could do. One of these is we could take this to A and this up to F if we wanted to keep them nice and close together. Another thing we could do, do you see this goes from A to C? And here we have a C. If we take the C to A, that's called a voice exchange. So the A and the C basically trade places. The 2 Fs can stay the same, and we have a perfectly doubled chord. Okay? So that is voicing of a single chord. I'll scan this sheet and add it underneath the video. So this is one voicing of a single chord. So this is video number 2 of introducing 4-voice part writing. And I'm going to say I'm talking about possible 2-chord combinations. Okay, so imagine we're in the key of C, and we're going from the 1 chord, and we could go from 1 to 2. That's a possible combination. We could go from 1 to 3. That's a possible combination. We could go from 1 to 4. Possible progression, combination of 2 chords. 1 to 5, 1 to 6, and 1 to 7. And of course we could do this exact same process for the 2 chord. The 2 chord going to everything, the 3 chord going to everything, the 4 chord going to everything, and so on. The thing is, you don't have to like memorize how to do 1 to 2 and 1 to 3, and 1 to 4, and then 2 to 3, and so on. This actually can be simplified down into 3 basic progressions. Okay, so look at 1 to 2 and 1 to 7. Okay, now this B right here, the 7, I could drop it down an octave to make the bass line a little more melodic. Do you see how this goes up a second? This goes down a second. Okay, because both of these are root movement by a second, the voice leading is going to work the same way. This one goes up, this one goes down, so they're going to be kind of mirror images of each other. Okay, so we have root motion by second, which also gives us 7th. Let's look at C to E and C to A. Okay, of course we could take this A, drop it down an octave, and this goes up a third, and this goes down a third. So that's our next category, root movement by third. The voice leading from 1 to 3 will be equivalent to the voice leading from 1 to 6, except 1 to 6 will basically do it upside down. And finally, 1 to 4 and 1 to 5. See, this is up a fourth, and this is down a fourth. So this is root movement by fourth or fifth. This is by third or sixth. So this gives us everything: second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh. I'm going to go through each of these in turn and show you examples of how to part write these 4 things. And this is actually way easier than the textbook would lead you to believe. I'm going to start with movement by third. Textbook starts with movement by fifth. I'm going to start with movement by third. Then I'll do movement by fifth. And then I will do movement by second. And I'll make a separate video for each of these. That's all for this one. Okay, here's the third video of introducing 4-voice writing. So this is number 3. Sorry. Yes, number 3. Movement by third. Okay. So let's take a look at this. I'm going to do this with just letter names first. Okay, so imagine we're in the key of C. And we're going from the 1 chord to the 3 chord. The 1 chord would be C, E, G. The 3 chord would be E, G, B. So you may notice that when we move by third, 2 of the notes are the same. And do you see the C to a B? We could actually bring this B down here. So 2 notes are the same, and the third voice moves by step. So let me show you how this works in 4-voice writing. We're in C major. We want to get a nicely voiced 1 chord. So I'm going to do a slightly different one than I did last time. Something a little more spread out, a little higher, will be a little brighter sounding. Okay, so now you can see that I have 2 C's, an E, and a G. We want to go from 1 to 3. I want to introduce you to a key concept which I call spivel. Okay. When you go elsewhere and talk about music theory with people, don't assume they know what this word is, because I made this up. It's very useful, however, and it stands for smoothest possible voice leading, aka SPVL, pronounced spivel. We want the smoothest possible voice leading. So here in this 3-chord, we know that we're going to need E, G, and B. The smoothest possible connection is the same note. Okay, so here's an E. We need EGB. Look at, here's our other E. Here's our G. And the C moves to B. Do you see how this right here, where the E's tie over and the C becomes B, plays out in 4 voices, where the E and the G tie over, the C becomes B, and then the 4th voice gives us the root movement from 1 to 3. Okay. Now, I would like you to try this, and we're going to do several stages of roots moving by third. Let's start in the key of B flat. So get out your manuscript paper and write the key signature for B flat, write the name of the key with a colon, and start with a 1 chord. I'd like you to start here with your B flat in the bass, and stop the video a second and write a 1 chord in 4 voices with B flat as your bass note. Okay, go ahead and do that. Okay, so now you're back. Hopefully you wrote a 1 chord. Your 1 chord should have 2 B flats, a D, and an F. I'm going to do it this way, where the bass and the tenor are singing B flat. On a piano keyboard, of course, that shows up as 1 note, but if you have 2 different people singing it, that's 2 pitches. And then an F and a D. Other things you could have done, B flat, D, F, B flat, anything would work as long as there are 2 B flats, a D, and an F, as long as all the voices are within the range, and as long as the spacing is decent. Okay, so this time we're going to go down a third. So this is to a 6 chord. So I would like you to use the concept of spivel. I want the smoothest possible voice leading from the 1 chord to the 6 chord. You're going to write a 6 chord with 2 roots, a third and a fifth, and you're going to connect it as smoothly as possible to the 4 voices. All right, so stop the video and do that. Okay, so we're back. So we have the 6 chord in B flat is G, B flat, D. So here we've got G, here we've got D. So I'm going to keep this G right here. Sorry, that's a D. Okay. Do you see how the tenor is on a B flat and we need a B flat? So we have G, B flat, D, and we need another G. This is classic bass movement by third. The bass moves by third. We have 2 common tones, and the third voice moves by step. Here's what I'd like you to do now. We've gone from 1 to 6, go to 4, and then to 2. So this is down a third, and then down another third. So this is chaining together, descending third progressions. Go ahead and do that. Okay, so the 4 chord in B flat is going to be E flat, G, B flat. I want to keep whatever common tones I can, because for smoothest possible voice leading, there's nothing smoother than a sustained tone. Okay, so E flat, B flat, and I'm going to keep this G right here. And we're going to need another E flat, so this voice is going to move by step. I'm adding in ties to show that when pitches sustain, and I'm using an arrow to show a pitch moving. When you're writing music, of course, you won't do this, but this is useful right now to make you aware of what's happening from one chord to the next. Do you see how when we move from 1 to 6 to 4, there's so much stationary, I want to say stationary motion, but it's not motion then if it's stationary. So here, this B flat, the tenor is just sustaining. The alto steps up and sustains. The soprano sustains and then steps up. And then if we go to the 2 chord, that's going to be C, E flat, G. I see 2 common tones up here, and this can move by step. And there we go. Okay, so root movement by third can be incredibly smooth, because when you move by third, you have 2 notes in common from chord to chord. This is the easiest one to do. That's why I introduced it first. Okay, that's all for this video. Here's video number 4 on our SATB Odyssey. This is root movement by 4th and 5th. This is actually the most common progression movement in tonal music. Okay, so you want to be able to do this one well. So the textbook defines 3 ways to move by root by 4th or 5th, and I think that we should forget about that, and we should think of spivel, smoothest possible voice leading, doubling, and if we do that, we'll automatically come up with one of those 3 ways. Let me show you what I mean. So let's look at this. This is a C. We're in the key of C. Let's go up to 4. Okay, so this is C, D, E, F. This is a 4th, so this is a root movement by 4th. If this went down to F, it would be root movement by a 5th, okay, because F is a 5th below. All right, so I'm going to choose a voicing for my first chord. And now I know that I have 2 C's, an E, and a G. I would like you, before I even do it, I'd like you to connect as smoothly as you can from 1 to 4. Okay, so you need 2 roots, a 3rd and a 5th in the 4 chord, and you need the smoothest possible connection from 1. Stop the video and do that. Okay, so do you see C, E, G has to connect to F, A, C. So you can see that there's a common tone. So we want to make sure we get that common tone. The pitches left are F and A. Do you see how this E can lead to F and this G can lead to A? That gives us a stepwise motion, a common tone, and 2 stepwise motions. Okay, so that's one way that could work. I would like to do the same progression from C to G. That's 1 to 5. Okay, so let's start with that same voicing, C, C, G, E. Stop the video and write a connection from 1 to 5, and of course the 5 chord is G, B, D. with smoothest possible voice leading and proper doubling. Okay, so we have to go to GBD. You see there's a G right here, so let's maintain that as a common tone. We need a B and a D. So this C can go to B, this E can go to D. And we have a common tone. So look at this one and this one. Do you see how this goes up a fourth and this goes down a fourth? Okay, so it's almost like you're on C and you go up a fourth, and then you're on C and you go down a fourth. It's a mirror image. When this goes up here, we have a common tone and two voices move by step. Here, when this goes down, we have a common tone and two voices move down. So can you see that the voice leading here is actually upside down here? Okay, so this went up a fourth, this goes down a fourth. This goes up a second, this goes down a second. This goes up a second, this goes down a second. It's something interesting to observe. You don't need to completely understand why that works. Okay. Now, the smoothest possible voice leading for this progression involves a specific melody. I would like us to look at all of the possibilities of different melody notes. Okay, so let's imagine we have a one chord. Here's our one chord. And let's go to the 5 chord. Okay. In this one, when we did the smoothest possible voice leading, E led to D. Let's take this E to a different chord tone. Okay. So we have G, B, D. Let's take this E to G. Okay. What if our melody did that? What does that do for the rest of our voicing? Okay. Well, we've got G and G. That's our doubled root. So we still need a B and we need a D. I think what we have to do is this has to go to D and this has to go to B. Now you may look at that and say, this doesn't look very smooth at all, because here's a step, here's a leap, and here's a leap. Okay? But remember, there's a P in spivel. Smoothest possible voice leading. Given the constraints of this melody, this is the smoothest possible voice leading. Let's do the final one where we go C to G. We start on the E. And now this went to D, this went to G. Let's take this to B. Okay, so this is 1 going to 5. So now here we're going to need G, B, D. We have G and B. We're going to need another G, and we're going to need another D. I see that this can move very smoothly to D, and this can maintain a common tone. Okay, so this is a step, common tone, and a leap of a fourth. So of these 3 possibilities, this one is the smoothest, because everything is either common tone or step. But given a specific melody, these are the smoothest ways to realize each of those. All right, here's what I'd like you to do. Let's do the key of B flat. And I'd like you to go in the key of B flat, 2, 5, 1. So you're going to write 3 chords, 2 chord, 5 chord, 1 chord in root position, and you're going to connect them as smoothly as possible from 2 to 5 and then from 5 to 1. Go ahead and stop the video and do that. When you're ready, come back. Okay, so we need our key signature. Okay, so 2 in the key of B flat is C, 5 is F, and 1 is B flat. I'm going to voice this first chord, C, G, E flat. These upper voices could be in any order. You do want to allow yourself space. Do you see how this goes up to F right here? So I probably wouldn't start the tenor on G since it's so close. They're going to kind of run into each other. Okay, so here we've got C, E flat, G. And again, don't do this. Okay, but I'm just doing this to show you. And here we have F, A, C. This is a visual representation of what should be happening in your head. Okay, so now we need F, A, C. We're going to do smoothest possible voice leading. So we have a common tone, we have an F, and we have an A. So right now we have a common tone and 2 voices moving by step. Now we're going to go to B flat. B flat is going to be B flat, D, F. Here's our common tone. Here's our B flat. And here's our D. So common tone, 2 voices moving by step. For all of these progressions, you really should play these on a keyboard. You need to hear these. You need to feel these 4 voices moving under your hands and understand how the pitches connect. So what we're doing here, we're making a very simple soprano melody, a very simple alto melody, simple tenor, and then the bass leaps around, and all those melodies combine together to give us 4-voice harmony that flows beautifully from one chord to the next. And that's all for this video. Video number 5, I just wanted to recap. Remember how I said within the major scale, you either have bass movement by second, which is the same as 7th, 3rd, which is the same as 6th, and 4th, which is the same as 5th. 2 videos ago, I talked about movement by 3rd. Last video, I did 4th and 5th. This leaves us with movement by 2nd. This is the one where you want to be the most careful. I think this is video number 5. Okay, so here's why you want to be careful with this. Say we go from C as a 1 chord, and we go from 1 to 2. You know you're going from C, E, G to D, F, A. You will be tempted, okay? You will be tempted, and do not do this, right? Do you see how everything can step up? And that seems like very good voice leading, right? Big problem is this completely destroys independence between voices. Right here, this is parallel fifths, which you don't want to do. Look between the outer voices. C and C is an octave. D and D is an octave. Also don't want to do that. So this whole thing, every one of you is going to do this. I know you're thinking, I would never do that. I'm going to be the exception, okay? Yeah. Every one of you is going to do this. Think about it. If you can keep this from happening, awesome. All right. So, how would we do this properly? C major, 1 to 2. The problem is here, everything going in the same direction gives us parallel fifths and octaves. So the answer is to move the upper voices in contrary motion to the bass. Okay, remember this steps up. Contrary motion means the upper 3 voices are going to go down to the next chord tone. So here we've got D, F, A, G will go down to F, E will go down to D, C is going to have to leap down to A. This doesn't look like the smoothest possible voice leading because there's 2 steps in a leap. And over here, look, there were 3 steps. This leap seems problematic, okay? But this is not a possible voice leading because it violates basic concepts of harmonic grammar. This is the smoothest possible voice leading within the concept of 4-voice tonality and independence of voices. So, in a nutshell, when the bass moves by step, the upper voices go in contrary motion to the bass to the nearest chord tone. This is an ascending step. Okay, this is a progression that you wouldn't really have, but say you wanted it. We went from 5 to 4, okay? I would like you to stop the video and write 5 to 4 in 4 voices, being cognizant of this and the idea that the upper voices should move contrary motion to the bass so that you don't have this. Okay, so I'm going to write this first chord, G, B, D, G. So I have 2 roots, a third and a fifth. 5 to 4. 4 is F, A, C. This bass movement is moving by second. If I take everything and just step it down, we'll get parallel fifths and parallel octaves. The way to avoid that is to have the upper voices move contrary motion to the bass. Okay, so F, A, C, B is going to go to C, G is going to go to A, D is going to go to F. Okay. These upper voices could be in any order, but you should have a voice that goes from G to A, a voice that goes from D to F, and a voice that goes from B to C. Okay. Here's the challenge round. Let's do, again, key of B flat. I would like you to write 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay. I'll help you get started on this. We get our key. All right. Here's our bass line. This is a very poor chord progression. Okay. So you're going to write this in 4 voices. Each of these is bass movement by step. So you're going to have to be careful that you don't just take every chord and walk up with them and get parallel fifths and octaves. Stop the video. I'd like you to try this in 4 voices and see what happens. Okay, so if you wrote your first chord such that, well, if you wrote your first chord and then you just took everything up by step, you fell into this trap and you have parallel fifths and octaves. Sounds terrible. You should be ashamed of yourself. You're bringing dishonor on your ancestors. Okay. Now, do you remember the way we avoid this is to have the upper voices move contrary motion to the bass? So imagine this is ascending. All of the upper voices are going to have to descend. We have to start with the tenor fairly high so that it can come down without colliding. All right? I'm just going to guess. I'm going to say I can start it on the highest possible tenor note for that first chord. B flat, F, D. I guess that should be the soprano note in B flat. Okay, so here I've got 2 roots, a third, and a fifth. Since these are moving by second, I wanted a lot of space so that when the upper voice move contrary motion to the bass, these will not collide. There'll be room for this tenor line to descend. So the 2 chord is C, E flat, G. So this is going to go to E flat, this will go to G, and this will go to C. All three voices contrary motion to the bass. This is going to go to D, F, and A. This is going to go E flat, G, B flat, B flat, E flat, G. When you do this, you automatically get a chord with the proper doubling. And now here, F, A, C, F. Okay. So again, this bass moved up by step. All the upper voices went contrary motion. If we did the same thing backwards, imagine this were going backwards. The bass would be descending, all of the upper voices would be ascending, moving in contrary motion. So that gives us all of the examples: root movement by second, by third, by fourth, and by fifth, which is the same as fourth, by sixth, which is the same as third, and by seventh, which is the same as second. So our next step is going to be to combine all of these kinds of movements into a single progression. Before that, however, I'd like to just play these for you. I'm going to use an organ sound, and let's hear how this sounds. So here's the bass movement by third. I'm rearranging the pitches because I have a very small keyboard. It's 2 octaves, and I'm just rearranging the pitches, but it's the same voice leading. So here's our 1 chord to 6, to E flat. So each of those voices. Okay, hold on. There we go. Good old MIDI sometimes doesn't work. So if our bass line goes, here it is with the tenor. With the alto. Here it is with the soprano. And all together. Listen to the movement by fifth. I can play on pretty much all of these, I think, for you. I have to rearrange the voices so it fits on my tiny keyboard. It's that one, second one, this one, and the final one. Sorry, MIDI gets caught sometimes. Here's this progression. I'm going to rearrange the pitches slightly so it fits. We're in the key of B flat. Here's a 2 chord. Okay. Music often progresses that way. And finally, movement by second. I'm going to start here and play to the end because my keyboard's not big enough. But I can do this. There's the 2, 3, 4, 5. We could go one more to 6. At that point, the voices are colliding with one another. Listen to that, what I just played. Okay, if you had done it the low rent way, it would have sounded like this. Okay, that sounds like one melody doubled in chords. Here it is with independent voices. So that's So I'd like to work through some of the examples from page 48. The page 48 examples will cover everything on the previous assignments. So if I do these for you, walk you through these, that should take care of the other stuff as well. I'm going to do bits and pieces of some. So I'm going to start here with this one, and I think I will go to here. Okay, so here's my process. We're in A major, we've got the 1 chord. The 1 chord is A, C sharp, E. We're going to need 2 A's, an E, and a C sharp. I see that this bass is descending, so I'm comfortable doubling that A. So the bass and tenor are both on that A, and then we've got A, C sharp, E. Now I see this is moving by thirds, so there's going to be lots of common tones here. So F sharp, A, C. Common tone, F sharp, C, F sharp, A, C. And now here, another third, D, F sharp, A. Here's a common tone. That's not a common tone. It's moving to D, and then the F sharp sustains. Now, very important, right here, 4 to 5, the bass is moving by step. You will be tempted to take the entire chord and slide it up a step. Luckily, they give you this melody note right here to keep you from doing that. Because if you did that, you would have parallel fifths and parallel octaves. Remember, when the bass moves by step, the upper voices must move contrary motion to the bass, to the nearest chord tone. Otherwise, you get parallel fifths and octaves. And we can go from this 5 to the 1. And then we can carry on. This is what it sounds like. Sort of. I can't play this one because it moves outside of the range of my small keyboard. Sorry about that. I will be able to sort of do this one. Okay, so I would like to look at one of the ones in minor, because those they have a couple extra little challenges. Do you remember how in minor we have a minor 1 chord, 2 is diminished, 3 is major, 4 is minor, 5 in natural minor is minor, but we usually use harmonic minor to give us the major 5 chord. 6 is major, 7 is usually diminished, coming from harmonic minor. Now, imagine we're in, let's see, this is F minor. So if we're in F minor has 4 flats, and the scale would be F, G, A flat, B flat, C, D flat, E flat, F. That's natural minor. Harmonic minor would have the E natural in it. Okay, so if we're using harmonic minor, this is the 7th note of the scale, and we get E, G, B flat. That is our 7 diminished chord. If, however, we did not use harmonic minor, we stuck with natural minor, we would have E flat, G, B flat. That would be an E flat major chord on the 7th note of the F minor scale. So we would have to call that a major 7. Okay, I'm going to give you a name for this 7 and this 7. Do you see how this 7 is on the lowered 7th scale degree? This one is on the leading tone. Okay, we're going to call this the leading tone diminished 7 chord. And we're going to call this, rather than leading tone, we're going to call this the subtonic major 7. Okay. Now, this does occur in music. I'll explain why in a moment. Most commonly when you see it, this will be leading you to a major 3 chord. And look right here in this excerpt we have, or in this figured bass, we have a major 7 right there, and it's going to a major 3. In this minor one, look, here's a major 7 going to a major 3. Why would major 7 go to major 3? Well, let's look at what these are. So we were in F minor. Okay. Okay, so that is our major 7. Our major 3 is A flat. And this is F minor. So now we have major 7 taking us to major 3. This is why that happens. The relative major of F minor is A flat major. F minor and A flat major have the same key signature. These chords, this is acting like 5 to 1 in the key of A flat major. When you hear it, it's going to sound like we're going to a major key, because in a sense we're going 5-1 of the relative major. So here's F minor. I'm going to revoice that so I can get it all on the keyboard. Okay, there's F minor. Let's go 5, 1. Now listen to this. That's that flat 7. Sorry, I totally messed that up. F minor. And from that point, it sounds like we're in A flat major. Okay, so once again, F minor, 5, 1. In fact, this is the progression I'm playing right here. Minor 1, 5, 1, subtonic major 7, which is 5 of the relative major, going to the relative major. All right, so let's part write this. Okay. I may do this 2 ways. I may not. We'll see how it goes. So this is a minor 1 chord. We need 2 roots, a 3rd, and a 5th. Those are our only choices for the notes in the middle. Here we're going to need C, C, E, and G. So there's C, E. We'll keep our C. There's our G. And we're just going to come right back to the chord we started on. Okay, sounds like this. Okay, so now this is going to go up the whole step, while this goes down to the subtonic major 7. All right, now remember, the bass is moving by step. The upper 3 voices must go contrary motion to the bass, or you will get parallel 5ths and octaves. Once we're here, this is bass movement by a 5th, so we can just make sure we do good, smooth voice leading. Taking us to there. Now watch this. 3 goes to 4, goes to 5. This is stepwise and stepwise. I'd like you to think about what I said over here about this, what I said up here about this, and if you haven't done it already, just take a moment and part write this out. If you have done this, look at what you've done and feel the shame. I'm just kidding. No, I guess they give you the melody so you can't mess it up too much, right? Okay, so 3, so 4, B flat, D, F. we have to move contrary motion to the bass. That gives us that. Contrary motion to the bass, giving us that. And now I'm going to do this way. And then resolve it across the bar line. This here. And this one, I'm going to go to 2 roots. So it is possible at the end, when you go from 5 to 1, to have 3 roots and a third in the final 1 chord. I'm going to make another video about sort of picky particularities of the 5 chord and how it resolves. I want to play this for you. So here's 1. Here's that 1. Here's the major 7. Now here's the contrary motion to the bass. Sorry about that. Okay, I totally botched that chord. I played a D natural. Here we go again. Okay, so there's an example of that. Now, I'd like to take one of these. I'd like to take this one. And I want to copy the bass line. And I want to write this where they haven't given us the soprano melody. I wish they had given us one like that in the homework. Okay, so I'm going to copy this bass line. Okay, now over here they've given us analysis, but I could also just hand this to you and say this is a figured bass. There are no numbers underneath. That means these are all root position chords. Okay, I would have to tell you a couple of things. I'd have to give you this, and I'd have to give you this, because these chords have a raised note above the third. Okay, so E minor, this is the first scale degree. This is the 7th note of the scale, but it's not the leading tone. So it's that major 7 chord, 3, 4, 1. This is the major 5 chord. This is interesting, 5 going to 6. One of my favorite progressions, 5 going to 6 in a minor key. This is 4, 5, 1. This video is getting a little long. I'm actually going to stop it here, and then I'm going to start another video with this analysis. Okay, so see you on the other side. Okay, so we're back. Again, this is this figured bass, or this part writing exercise, but I'm going to get rid of their soprano, and I'm just going to follow the principle of spival. We are going to go for smoothest possible voice leading, or I could say we're going to spival that bad boy. Okay, so here we go. We're in E minor. Every chord has to have 2 roots, a third, and a 5th. So I am going to start here, E, B, E, G, root, root, third, and 5th. Now, look at this. This goes a step. So we know the upper voices have to go contrary motion to the bass. Otherwise, we'll have parallel fifths and octaves. Okay, so this has to be D, D, F sharp, A. Now this is a movement by fourth, so we know we're going to have some common tones and some stepwise motion. And again, two roots, third and a fifth. Now this moves by step once again, so the upper voices have to move contrary motion to the bass to avoid parallel fifths and octaves. And then this is moving by fourth, so this is E, G, B. So this will have to go here, this here, and this here. Now this is going to the 5 chord. So we need 2 Bs, an F, and a D sharp to make it a major 5 chord. The D sharp comes from E harmonic minor. Now this is a great sound. I want to play for you up to this point. You expect this to go to there, okay? We're on this chord. Instead we get, it's very surprising. This 5, we expect it to go to 1, but instead it deceives us. This is called a deceptive progression from 5 to 6. Now, you know how when the bass moves by step, the upper voices have to go contrary motion, otherwise you get parallel fifths and octaves. There is one exception, and that is when we go from 5 to 6. And I want to show this to you. Okay, so here, the 6th chord is C, E, G. This note, yes, that goes contrary motion, otherwise that would go to C and we'd have parallel octaves. So this note, this F sharp, if this went to G, that would be parallel octaves with the bass. So yes, this has to go contrary motion. But this D sharp right here, if we did contrary motion to the bass and took that to C, I'm just going to sketch it in. Okay, if we did that note, this is a melodic augmented second. And that would be extremely difficult to sing. We would be using this leading tone to have the effect of the leading tone and then negating it by singing this. And this is the La, Ti to lay solfege. So just listen to this melody right here. This is the alto melody. If you were singing that, you'd want to go to there. Instead, if we had the C, it just feels like a wrong note, right? Okay, so if we take this leading tone, this D sharp, and we resolve it up, okay, that's a parallel third with the bass, which is totally fine. The only thing is, at this point, we have a root, 2 thirds, and a fifth. So the third is doubled. That is an exception. When you go from 5 to 6 in a deceptive progression, resolve the leading tone up, the 6th chord will have a doubled third as a result. Okay, so once we're back here, we can get back to where we need to be. We need A, C, and E. And now we're going to come to a 5 chord. 4 goes to 5, so we have to go contrary motion. Okay. I guess we can change the inversion of this chord just for kicks. And then let's resolve it like this, because I said smoothest possible voice leading. Okay, and then I want to look and see if this is the melody that they came up with. But first, let's listen to this. Sorry. you can compare. Yeah, you'll see the melody is basically the same at the beginning. This goes me, fa, sol, fa, me, re, do. Me, fa, sol, fa, me, re, do. But then this leaps around a little bit. It goes do, fa, re, ti, do. And this is smoother. Do, do, ti, re, me. Okay, so for this one, I followed Spivel, smoothest possible voice leading. All right. I think that's all for now. If you have questions about anything you want explanatory videos on, I'm happy to make them. Let me know. I will make another video later talking about 5 going to 1. I want to do a little more detail on that, and 5 going to 6 in major, 5 going to 6 in minor. Okay. But I'm going to stop for now. So let's talk about the progression 5 to 1. 5 to 1 comes from melodic motion. You know how when we go up the scale, you get to the 7th note of the scale. That wants to resolve up, right? Also, when you go down, that also wants to resolve down. This pattern right here, where one voice goes 7-1 and another voice goes 2-1, was the closing figure in counterpoint, and it's called the clausula formalis, the formal close. If we add in a third voice that harmonizes with it, this can give us GBD going to C, 5 to 1. Now you see all 3 voices at the end here are roots. There's no thirds and fifths. So let's say we're going to add in another pitch here to make it SATB. And then this G, we might think of the G wanting to sustain, but then we'd have 3 roots and a fifth. That's going to sound rather hollow. When really at the end, here's what that would sound like resolving. We're used to hearing with the third in there. So this G will often go down to here. So let's talk about different ways of resolving the 5 chord. Okay, I'm going to put the 2nd scale degree, the 5th of the 5 chord, in the soprano, because that has a couple possibilities. Okay, so this is going to go to the 1 chord. Now, in this chord, these tendencies are still present. The leading tone wants to resolve. Okay. Here, this note, the 2nd scale degree, wants to resolve. And then we want to have a third. So this goes down here. That's one way to resolve this. That respects the leading tone resolving up, 2nd scale degree resolving down. And this leaps to give us a harmonious final chord with a third in it. Now there are other ways to come up with a more complete final chord. Let's talk about some of those. So if I go back to this same voicing of the 5 chord, one possibility would be to just follow our smoothest possible voice leading to the complete chord. And here now we've got 2 roots, a third and a fifth. You can see that here the D, rather than resolving down to 1, where it kind of wants to go to close out the melody, this goes up to 3. That does give us a full chord, but that's not giving the 2 the closure that it might want to resolve down to tonic. Okay, but that's one way to do that. And if we rearrange the voices, so this was in an inner voice, it wouldn't be very obvious that that happened. Now let's look at this. This is another option. Okay, so we're going from 5 to 1. Take this here and this here. This is like this one so far. See how the B will want to resolve up to C, and it will give us 3 roots and a third. There's a root, 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 and a third. Now, this is something you can do when you have the leading tone in an inner voice, meaning in either the alto or the tenor. You can do what's called frustrating the leading tone. Remember, the leading tone wants to go up to tonic, T-do, T-do. If it's in an inner voice, we can actually do this and not let it go where it wants to go. Okay, that's called frustrating the leading tone. So that would sound like I'm going to do it in a different key just because I can't play that note on my keyboard, so I'll do it in F. Okay, it gives us a complete final chord. So that's one way to do it. Keep in mind that 5 to 1 is the most common progression in tonal music, and it creates a sense of closure and arrival on our final tonic chord, and it can do that strongly if the leading tone resolves appropriately. Keep that in mind. Last thing I want to talk about here is the 5 chord resolving deceptively to the 6 chord. Okay, so when 5 goes to 6, it's not going to 1, it's going to 6, so this is going by step. These upper voices will have to move contrary motion, otherwise we'll get parallel fifths and octaves. Here, this B, if it moved contrary motion, it would give us 2 A's, a C, and an E, which would be our doubling. But in this case, we actually do want to resolve the leading tone up. When we go from 5 to 6, we have 2/3 in the chord, a root, and a fifth. Okay? So when we go, if we had gone from 4 to 5 to 6, this goes up a step, the upper 3 voices go contrary motion. When we go from 5 to 6, this goes up a step. These two go contrary motion, but here we still respect the leading tone resolving up to do. And that gives us the doubling, where in 5 to 6, the 6th chord has a doubled third. Okay. Next semester, we will talk about what happens when we add a 7th onto this chord. And that gets interesting and colorful as well. All right, that's all for that. All right, theory people, let's talk about first inversion chords. As in the context of figured bass, and also just in analysis and tonal music, okay? So we've talked about triads being in different inversions. For example, if we're in the key of C, that would be a 1 chord in root position. If the 3rd is in the bass, that would be a 1-6. And the defining feature to make it a first inversion chord is that the E is in the bass. The upper notes could be in any order, so this would also be a 1-6 because it's the notes of C major, E is in the bass. Okay. Now, why might we want to use a 1-6? A couple reasons. The main ones are to make the bass line a melody. Okay, so that's like a very big one. You know how when we do our harmonic dictation and even figured bass, we think about moving the soprano, alto, and tenor as smoothly as possible, but the bass is just leaping around from root to root. It's not very melodic. So now we can use inversions to create more of a melody in the bass line. Okay. Second reason, variety. Gives you another sound to use in your harmonies. Okay. Seems like there was a third reason. Okay, we'll come back to that. Melody, variety. Okay, so let's just talk about some simple part writing with this. Okay, so what if I have a 1 chord in C and we go 1, 5, 1. Okay. Now, if we go 1, 5, 1, the bass would be C, G, C, which is a leaping bass. Okay. What if we want to make the bass more melodic? Well, we could consider what's the first inversion of the G chord. We have G, B, D. First inversion would have B in the bass. And look, we could do that, and all of a sudden our bass line is a melody rather than something that's leapy. Okay, so that's a very good demonstration of using first inversion chords to give you a melody rather than something that leaps. All right, so that's one. Here's another one. What if you have 2 C chords in a row? Okay, that can sound a little monotonous. Instead, maybe you want to go from 1 to 1-6, just to give you some variety in the bass. The third one up here is related to variety, but it's to give you a weaker version of a chord. Okay, so it gives you variety in strength. So say a piece ends 5-1 in root position. That's going to sound very conclusive because 5-1 is a strong progression. They're both root position. It can sound like the end of a piece, and maybe you don't want it to sound as conclusive or decisive or as terminative. So maybe you would use a first inversion chord and go 5-6-1. That won't sound as strong. Or you could go from 5 to 1-6. That will also not sound as strong. Let me play this for you so you can hear. So say we're in the key of C, volume here. I'll go up a little higher. There's our 5. Do you hear this? Sounds decisive. Instead, though, we could go, it doesn't sound as strong, moving 5-1. That's 5-6-1. We could go 5-1-6. That's also weaker. Okay, so those are all possibilities. The only practical difference between first inversion and root position is doubling. In root position, we generally double the root. Okay. In first inversion, think about the use of first inversion chords. They create melody. They're used for variety. In a way, it's increasing the linear flow of the voices. So first inversion, we actually can double anything as long as the voice leading is good. Okay, so there's no prescription for first inversion. You can double root or third or fifth, whatever works best. Okay, one exception, don't double the leading tone. Okay, and you can definitely hear why you wouldn't want to do that. Imagine, again, we're in the key of C. And I'm going to go to a 5-6. Do you hear that chord? I have the leading tone doubled. Now the leading tone wants to resolve up. If I double the leading tone, I get parallel octaves when I resolve it. Okay? In a nutshell, root position, double the root. First inversion, double whatever works best, but don't double the leading tone. The textbook gives you very detailed examples of different ways of doubling things. Don't worry about that. Keep in mind, make it as smooth as possible, double whatever works best, and don't double the leading tone, and you'll be fine. So let's take a look at this right here. So we got C, I'm going to go G, E, C. There's our one chord, two roots, a third and a fifth. Here we're going to want to go G, B, D, and we can double whatever works best. All right, so obviously G here is going to be good. Here, this C, see how this goes to B? This can't go to B for two reasons. That would be parallel octaves with the bass, plus it would be a doubled leading tone, which would then resolve as parallel octaves into the next chord. So this one needs to be C. This one I want to take to here to be as smooth as possible. And now we can go to the final chord. Okay. Remember, the problem with parallels is between is parallel octaves and parallel fifths. If you look at the tenor and the bass here, that's parallel tenths. That's great. We just don't want parallel fifths or parallel octaves because that destroys the independence of the voices. So let's listen to this. So in a way, okay, this sounds different than root position 151, because this is actually this is 4 little melodies. And so the 5 chord is a byproduct of voice leading. This is a neighbor note to C. This is a neighbor note to E. This is a neighbor note to C. And then we have a common tone. So you can think of this as we have 3 neighbor notes. If you do all 3 of them at the same time, it happens to form a first inversion 5 chord. So is it more important that it's a 5 chord, or is it more important that it's a linear melody? And the answer to that is yes. It's not one over the other. They're both important. Okay, so that's a linear thing. Now let's look at variety. Okay, so say we're going from 1 to 1/6. I'm just going to sketch out this kind of spread out voicing so you can see it quite well. 2 roots, a third, and a fifth. Now, there are 2 main ways to do this, and it will depend on the context. It will depend on what you're trying to do melodically. Okay, the first thing you could do, if you can double anything, then you can just keep the upper 3 voices the same, and you have a legitimate doubling of the 1/6. Here we had 2 roots, third and a fifth. This leapt up. We still have 1 root, 2 thirds, and a fifth. That's one way. Very simple. Okay. Another thing that happens very frequently is this. I'll do the same progression, 1 to 1/6. I'm going to write it here. We've got this. Okay. When you move from root position of a chord to first inversion of a chord or back, often you may have what's called a voice exchange. Oh, my cat. Okay. He's a troublemaker. All right, so here we go. A voice exchange works this way. Do you see we've got C going to E? This voice is C to E. This voice is E. We're going to take E to C. So they actually swap. So C moves to E, E goes to C. And they just switch notes. That's called a voice exchange. Literally, the soprano and the bass are exchanging parts. The other voices can just sustain, super smooth. So this works really well. This one is smoother. You see the upper 3 voices don't move. This one is more balanced because 1 voice moves up, 1 moves down. This one also does maintain 2 roots in the chord, which has a slight benefit because a lot of our voice leading is based on working with chords with 2 roots in them. So if, for example, this was going into a first inversion, root position 4 chord next, then it might work better to have this voice exchange here giving us 2 C's, because then if it goes to 4, watch what happens. This C can sustain, this G can go here, and this A can go here. It's very, very smooth. Okay. Here, it's a similar kind of thing. F would resolve up, C would sustain. And then we're going to need an A. We've actually got a problem here. Okay, this E cannot go up to F because that would be parallel octaves with the bass. So this G has to go to F, and this E has to go up to A to give us a complete chord. So that is creating some problems. In fact, that's too much space there, so we'd have to come down to A. All right. So because of what happened in this context, the voice exchange worked better. That doesn't mean it will always be the best one, though. You look at the specific context, and you figure out what works best. I'm going to stop this because I want to do videos with that are a little shorter, so you can repeat them if necessary. Right, so this is the first one, introducing the concepts of first inversion chords. Okay, so let's continue talking about first inversion chords a little bit. Well, the sun is a little bright. I don't know. I'm getting a shadow. Oh well, we'll just deal with it. What better way to spend a sunny day than learning about first inversion chords? That's what they always say. Okay, so let's look at what if we have a simple progression. I'm going to keep it in C just to just for ease. So I'm keeping this in C. Right now, this is a very simple progression. We've done this a million times. 1, 4, 5, 1. So let's say I want to embellish this C right here with a neighbor note. I could do that. So this gives us 1, 5, 6, 1. And then I could move to 1, 6 here with an E in the bass. So our bass line has changed from to much more melodic, much more variety. This is what it would sound like. Here's the original. And I've added in some first inversion chords to make a more melodic bass line. I'm going to do that again. Just sounds different, right? There's more variety, it's more linear, it's more melodic in the bass line. So if we were to part write this, let's do it. C, C, G, E. Okay, here's our first chord. We're doing the 5 chord here, 1, 5, 1. It's inverted. So we need G, B, D. So let's keep this common tone. We got a B. We do not want to take this to B because that would be parallel octaves with the bass. So we'll take that to D. And we'll also take this to D. Super smooth. This is completely out of alignment. Sorry about that. And then the 1 chord will be right here. Okay. So we start on this chord. Very smooth. Now we're moving from 1 to 1, 6. I think I'm going to do the voice exchange here. So here C goes to E. We'll take this voice E to C. And then the other voices can just stay the same. And then it's fairly easy to move into the 4 chord, and then the 5 chord, and then the 1 chord. Okay, so C, F, A, B, D, G, and then we can resolve here. like this. Not like that. Let's keep the G in the upper voice. And we'll have this go to E. Okay. So the original progression was just 1, sorry, 1, I'll do it here. 1, 4, 5, 1, and now with the bass in the inversions. Underlying it is the same thing that was in the original progression. And this whole thing right here, in a way, it's like an expanded version of the one chord, where we have a neighbor note, and we have some variety, and then we move on to 4, 5, 1. Okay? So I would like you now to stop the video and do the figured bass number 1 for this week. I guess maybe I'll just do them in order, so it'll be called figured bass number 5, but it's number 1 for this week. And that will include first inversion chords. So do that next, and then you can watch the walkthrough video, and I'll talk through everything that happens in that. Okay? All right, see you on the other side. So now we're going to talk about the second use of a 6/4 chord, and this is going to be called the pedal 6/4. Okay, so let me write something out here. This is not focusing so well today. I don't know why. All right, so a pedal 6/4 has a sustained bass note. The first chord is root position, so it doesn't need anything. This note can be re-articulated, or this could be written as a dotted half note or a longer note. But root position goes to 6/4 and then returns back to root position, so we are going to write 5/3 just to make sure that, just to clarify the fact that it changes back to root position afterwards. Okay, I'm just going to do this first of all as just a chord, like a triad, just to show you how this works. Okay, so imagine you've got the C sustaining here. All right, and think of this as 5/3 to 6/4 to 5/3. Okay, and remember this is optional. So this actually tells you exactly what to write. See how there's a 3 that goes to a 4 and then back to a 3? That's this note right here. The 3 steps up to 4 and then steps back down to 3. Likewise, the 5 steps up to 6 and steps back down to 5. So we have one sustained note on the bottom. The term for that sustained note in the bass is called a pedal tone, which is why this is called a pedal 6/4. That comes from organ playing. Let me get an organ sound here, where you'd have a sustained note in the pedals of the organ. When you sustain a single note in the bottom, especially in the pedals of an organ, it's called a pedal tone. And here we move from root position to 6/4 back to root position with the sustained note, and essentially creates a set of 2 neighbor notes. I'm going to go back to piano sound. I'll go back to organ. It's really easy to hear. Here. So there are 2 neighbor notes that embellish this triad. And this chord is a 6/4. We could say this is a 1 and a 4, 6/4 and a 1. I don't really hear a 4 chord there. I mean, we can call it a 4/6/4, but it's not functioning like a 4 chord. Sometimes people will just write 1, 5/3, 6/4, 5/3, and the dashes show you that these are just melodic embellishments. That's a way to do it. Some people will write 1 pedal 6/4, 1. I mean, I think for now, just to be consistent, we should write 1 4 6 4 and 1. But maybe put that in parentheses just to show that as a 6/4 chord, it's not there to give us a strong 4 chord. It's there to embellish this 1 chord. Okay. So part writing, super easy. All right, I'm gonna get 2 roots. There's a 5th, and there's a 3rd. Okay. If you remember that in a 6/4 chord, you always double the 5th of the chord, which means you always double the bass of the chord. Again, this writes itself. So we got C, E, G. Here's the 5th of the chord. We're going to have to double that. So we're going to sustain that, and we're back here. Super easy. You might also remember that when you do a pedal 6/4, 5 steps up to 6 and back down to 5. 3 goes to 4 and back down to 3. That motion, that was 3 4 3, and here's the 5. It's called a neighbor note. We do them at the same time, and it forms this pedal 6/4, which has another name. Sometimes it is called a neighbor 6/4, okay? And that's acknowledging the neighbor motion that you get in the upper voices. So here we go. So 3 goes to 4. Here's 3, up to 4, back down to 3. 5 goes to 6, back down to 5, and that is it. It's awesome. Okay. This is used in popular music all the time, in blues. I'm just playing F major. Go to the 4 chord. A little louder. 5. All I've done is a 12-bar blues with 1, 4, and 5 on each of those chords. Pedal 6/4, there's the 1 chord. Here's the 4 chord. Sorry, wrong key. Here's the 5 chord. All right, so you can continue that. And it's fun. It sounds cool. All right, so that's a pedal 6/4. I should probably have you write one of these for fun before we go on. So I am going to ask you to do F minor and F is going to sustain in the bass. That is an F. This is going to be a 6/4 and a 5/3. Okay, we can put in ties if we want. Okay, write this down, stop the video, write this in 4 voices. This is a pedal 6/4. Okay, really stop it and do it. I can see you that you're not stopping it. Okay, fine, here we are. So this is a 1 chord, 4 6/4, back to 1 5/3. I'm going to voice this F, C, A, F. It could be voiced in various ways. So F is the root. Here F is the 5th. We know we got to double the 5th in this chord. And then the root again. And now the 3 goes to 4 and back to 3. The 5 goes to 6 and back to 5. This sounds awesome in minor. Okay. This voicing is nice because you have the F in the soprano and the bass. Okay. You can sustain it. Beautiful, right? So that is the pedal 6/4. When you go to figured bass of the day, number 9, you will see that this includes both a pedal 6/4 and a passing 6/4. All right, so why don't you go ahead and do that? See you in the next video where I walk through this. Okay, so here's the first of 3 videos about 6/4 chords. Here we go. Okay, you remember 6/4 refers to an inversion. Get this in focus. 6/4 means inverted chord with a 5th in the bass. It's second inversion. So if we have a C major chord, root position, we call it 5/3. Root is in the bass. The 3rd is in the bass. It's 6/3. We learned about those last week. And this week we're talking about the 6/4 chord, which has the 5th in the bass. Of the 3 inversions of the chord, root position is the most stable. The root is on the bottom. It sounds like a C major chord. The first inversion is stable but not as stable. And the 6/4 is actually unstable or instable. It's not stable, let's put it that way. And the reason is this 4th right here, we actually expect to hear that note resolve down and the 4 to go down to a 3. Okay, I'm not going to take the time to explain why that is, but I'll do that when we're in class together in the same room at the end of January. Okay, just accept it for now. A 6/4 is somewhat unstable, therefore a 6/4 chord has a specific use. In fact, it has 3 specific uses. The first is called passing 6/4. The second is a pedal 6/4, and the third is a cadential 6/4. I'll do a video about each one. Right now I'm going to talk about the passing 6/4. Okay, so imagine we have this. This bass line, we have a 1 chord in root position that goes to 1/6. And right here, do you see how this note passes between 1 and 1/6? This chord, I'm going to make a passing 6/4. Okay? The purpose of this chord is to connect this with this. It is a passing 6/4, that means a connecting 6/4. Okay? Do you remember when I talked about moving from 1 to 1/6, how we might use what's called a voice exchange? And I'm going to do that right here. So for the voice exchange, the bass moved from C to E. At the same time, the soprano moved from E to C. So these pairs of pitches, they swapped notes, okay? So a passing 6/4 fills this in with connecting notes. So if you look here, C, D, E, right? D is a passing note. Up here, E, D, C, that's a passing note. So now it's not just C goes to E and E goes to C, but it's C, D, E against E, D, C. Okay. Now this can be harmonized as a 6/4 chord. This ends up being a 5/6/4, which is G, B, D. And if we connect it smoothly, you'll see that it does this. Now, doing this correctly, which we did, thinking of this as a passing note filling in the notes of a voice exchange, automatically gave us the proper doubling for the 6/4 chord. You'll notice this 6/4 chord, the fifth of the chord, which is the bass note, is what is doubled. Okay, so this is a hard and fast rule. 6/4, double the fifth, which is also the bass note. Okay, so let's listen to what this sounds like. So first I'll just start with the one chord, and I'm just going to do soprano and bass. You hear that? That is the voice exchange, and I can do it with the chords. And now I can take the soprano and bass. Okay. Voice exchange with the passing note, and I add in the inner voices. Okay. Perfect. Beautiful, right? This could also go the other way. Okay. This happens all the time in music. There's a piece by Beethoven, Sonata, Opus 13 at the very beginning. Goes from 1/6 to 1 through a passing 6/4. And then it uses that motivically throughout the piece. Okay, I would like you to try one of these on your own. I'm going to give it to you. Oh, don't want a black pen, I want a blue pen. So let's do this same progression. Let's do it in the key of D major. And I would like you to do D, E, F in the bass. So that's first, second, third scale degree, root position, second inversion, first inversion. Okay, I'd like you to take a moment, stop the video, try writing this. Okay, and then come back and I will do this for you now. So this is D major. There's nothing under this, so that's root position. Right here, this is a 6/4. That means that this is the fifth of the chord. So this is a 5/6/4. This is the third of the chord. This is a 1/6. Seeing this, I understand that this is a passing 6/4. So what's probably going to happen, in fact, what is definitely going to happen is a voice exchange where the bass goes D, E, F sharp, and another voice goes F sharp, E, D. And in fact, I'm just going to write that in right now. And I suggest you start thinking of this way as a 3-chord unit. Okay, with the voice exchange, that will solve many problems for you. Okay, so then if I voice this first chord, 2 roots, a third, and a fifth, and then I know here I'm going to need A, C sharp, and E. The only choices for this is C sharp here and A here. And then here we're back to 2 Ds, an F sharp, and an A. We have our lovely voice exchange here between soprano and bass. We have the proper doubling of the 6/4 chord where the fifth of the chord is doubled. And sounds awesome. Here we go. Okay, so that is passing 6/4 chord. Okay. I'll record another video in a bit that explains the pedal 6/4 and then a third one on cadential 6/4. I also am uploading figured bass of the day, numbers 8, 9, and 10. Number 8 adds in passing 6/4. Number 9 has passing and pedal. Number 10 has passing, pedal, and cadential. All right, so see you there. All right, so here we are, the third type of 6/4 chord. Remember the first one we talked about was what? Passing. 6/4. The second one was the pedal, 6/4. And now we're going to talk about the cadential 6/4. The cadential 6/4 is a chord that is applied specifically to the 5 chord. And it's usually in the context of the ending of a phrase where you go from 5 to 1. Okay, so imagine we are in the key of G, or key of C, excuse me. We're going to go 5 to 1. Okay, so I'm going to write my 5 chord right here. Okay, so there's our 5 chord, G, B, D. This is just close position, not 4 voice. I want you to really see what happens. And then I'm going to just take this to this 1 chord right here, just so that it can connect smoothly to where we're going. Okay, so now this is 5 to 1. A cadential 6/4 is an embellishment to a 5 chord. Okay, so in this 5 chord, this is a 5/3, correct? It's a root position 5 chord. We have a 3rd, we have a 5th. This is a 5/3. A cadential 6/4 embellishes a 5/3 by doing an upper neighbor to the 5 and an upper neighbor to the 3. That's all it does. So it's very similar to a pedal 6/4, except you don't have the 5/3 before it. Okay, so we've got the G, we've got these 2 embellishing pitches that take us. Let me play this all for you so you can hear what I'm talking about. Here is 5 going to 1. Okay, so here's 5. Now if we begin with the cadential 6/4, it will go. Okay, it's an embellishment of a 5 chord. Let's try another one. Here in close position, and then, so I would like you to write bass clef. Let's do D major and a 5 chord with a cadential 6/4 and then a 5/3. Okay. Let me do that differently. I apologize. So in D, the 5 chord is A, right? So I'm going to do this as a figured bass. So we could write 6/4, 5/3, and then this would be root position. Now, this is a root position A chord, 5/3. Normally, we wouldn't have to include that 5/3. In this case, we do, because we just had an A with a 6/4. And we would assume that that would continue until we're told otherwise. So this is, in effect, canceling this out. All right, so this chord right here, this is a 5 chord. Yes, A, C sharp, E. That's the 5 chord in the key of D. This chord, it tells you what to write. There's a 4th above the bass. There's a 6th above the bass, right? And 6/4 goes to 5/3. What do we call this chord? All right, well, you could look at it and see, well, this is a D, F sharp, A. This is a 1/6/4 chord, okay? We're not going to call it that, and here is why. When you come to this point in a piece of music, you hit this chord, it does not sound like a 1 chord. It sounds like an embellishment of a 5 chord. It sounds like neighbor notes to a 5 chord. So to call it a 1 is to attribute to it a quality that it does not have. Let me play for you just to show you what I mean. So we're in the key of G. Let's see. So here's 1. I'm going to go to 5. very simple progression. 1, 4, 5, 1. Now I'm going to add this embellishment here to the 5 chord. Okay, so all I did was I stuck that in there. Now listen if I stop on this spot. Here's 1, 4, cadential 6/4. That does not sound like a 1 chord. That does not sound like a point of arrival, a point of cadence, a point of rest. In fact, it sounds like it needs to continue on. We were here. Needs to continue on to there, which then can resolve there. Okay. I will link some videos to classical concertos in Mozart piano concertos or Beethoven violin concerto or Haydn trumpet concerto, any of those. Right before, near the end of the first movement, the orchestra will arrive on a cadential 6/4 and stop and create a break. And everything will stop. Feels like a rift in space-time. Okay. And in that break is where you have the cadenza. All right. So there you go. So you would hear then there would be a showy cadenza, and the soloist would come around to, and the 5 would finally go to a 5 chord and resolve, and the piece could go on and end. That is how you do a cadential 6/4. Let's look at it in 4 voices. All right, so in the key of C. Okay, if you have this as a figured bass, you're going to know that this is 5 to 1 over here. You're going to know this is the cadential 6/4 on the 5, right? So this is a 6/4 to a 5/3. Oh yeah, I didn't talk about what we're going to call this chord, because you could call this a 1/6/4, but it doesn't sound like a 1. This is what we're actually going to call it. We're going to call the whole thing 5, and then we're going to draw these little lines right here to show that this is not a 5 chord in second inversion. This is actually a root position 5 chord which has 2 embellishments on it. And let me explain that. If I wrote 5/6/4 by itself, just a 5/6/4 chord in the key of C, 5 is GBD, 6/4 means the 5th is in the bass. This is a 5/6/4, okay, in the key of C. 5/6/4 does not equal 5/6/4 with the dashes. This means cadential 6/4. This means a root position 5 chord with this embellishing 6/4 chord. That's what these dashes mean. So this means a G will be in the bass, and above the G we have a 6 and a 4 going to a 5 and a 3. Okay, we're going to call it this. The textbook comes up with this weird way where they call it 1/6/4 to 5, but then they do a bracket and say the whole thing acts like a 5 chord. That's made up by the textbook authors, and you know, I like making stuff up, but everybody else in the world does it this way. Let's do it this way. Okay, I think you're all smart enough to realize that this chord right here sounds like a 5 chord, acts like a 5 chord. Yes, it appears to be a 1 chord because of the notes, but it doesn't sound or act that way. All right, that's why this is theory. Okay. All right, so part writing. We've got a repeated bass note that goes 5/5/1 in the bass, 6/4/5/3. This is the pattern that you need to recognize for a cadential 6/4. It would be analyzed like this: 5/6/4 with the dashes showing the connection, And this right here tells you exactly what to write. Pay attention, listen carefully, it tells you what to write, okay? Remember what you double in a 6/4 chord? You double the bass, right? You double the fifth of the chord. So there we go. Look at this. It tells you to write a fourth above the bass and move that fourth to a third above the bass. It tells you to write a sixth above the bass and it will step down to a fifth above the bass. Can't get any easier than that. It tells you exactly what to write. And now we're on a root position 5 chord. We can take this to 1. So here's our credential 6/4. Sorry. Okay. So there you go. Credential 6/4. The next figured bass of the day number 10 will include all 3 varieties, chock full of 6/4 chords. So I'll see you over there. I suggest you, of course, attempt it on your own. I think you're perfectly capable of doing it. Give it your best, and then come over and I'll walk you through it. So I'm going to show you how to resolve root position 5/7. Let's do this in the key of F. So we'll start with our 5 chord, which is C, E, G, and B flat. This is a complete 5/7 chord because there's a root, 3rd, 5th, and 7th. One thing to remember when you resolve a 5/7 in root position is typically it will go to a root position 1 chord. So let's go ahead and resolve the bass to the root of the 1 chord. Next thing we want to do is make sure we resolve the 7th down. Then we want to resolve the leading tone up. And now we have just the tenor here to resolve. If you look at the chord we have here, we've got 2 roots and a 3rd. We're missing the 5th of the chord. But if we take the tenor to the 5th C, that will be parallel 5ths with the bass. So here's first thing to note. A complete 5/7 chord, if you follow the voice leading properly, it will resolve to an incomplete 1 chord. This goes here, and you'll see we have a root and another root, a root, and a 3rd. So 3 roots and a 3rd. Now, if we have a 5/7 resolving to a root position 1 and we want to complete 1 chord, then we have to make our 5/7 an incomplete chord. You see this 5/7 has a root, a 3rd, and a 7th. This is incomplete. By doing this, we're able to resolve to our root position 1 chord, the 7th resolves down, the leading tone resolves up, and this extra root can sustain, giving us the proper doubling of 2 roots, a 3rd, and a 5th. Finally, it is possible to go from a complete 5/7 to a complete 1 chord, but only if you violate voice leading. Okay, so here, root position 5 is going to go to root position 1. The 7th needs to resolve down. This G has to go here. And now the E wants to resolve up to F. If this were to resolve up to F, it would be the exact same as this progression over here. But what's missing, we have 2 roots, a 3rd, we need a 5th. We can actually put the 5th in this voice. And this right here, where the leading tone does not resolve up but leaps down, is called frustrating the leading tone. If the leading tone is not in the soprano or the bass, you can frustrate the leading tone, and that will give you a complete 5/7, root, third, fifth, seventh, going to a complete 1 chord, root, root, third, and fifth. These rules about incomplete and complete only apply to root position 5/7 chords going to root position 1 chords. The next video will show you how to resolve inverted 5/7 chords, which do not have the complete and incomplete issues. So I will see you there. So now I'm going to show you how to resolve inverted 5/7 chords. Let's do the E flat. And we'll start with 5, 6, 5. So in the key of the 5 chord would be F, A, C, E flat. 5, 6, 5 would have the A in the bass, the third chord. F, A, C, E flat. So that's a complete 5, 6, 5. We want to resolve the 7th down. That's the first thing you should do. Leading tone should go up. Maintain our common tone, and then this last pitch will move by step, giving us the proper doubling of 2 roots, a third and a fifth, taking us to the 1 chord. Next, we will do 5, 4, 3. That'll have the 5th in the bass, C, A, F, and E flat. Again, 7th needs to resolve down, leading tone resolves up, maintain the common tone, and the last voice will move by step. Now here, this voice can move to either D or B flat. Right now, I'm going to move it to B flat, which is a root position 1 chord. Completely fine if we wanted to take it to 1/6 with the third in the bass as well. Either way is fine. And finally, 5, 4, 2 has the 7th in the bass. We also need a root, a third, and a fifth. Again, first thing, find the 7th, resolve it down by step. Then we're going to resolve the leading tone, maintain the common tone, and move the last voice by step. Now since the 7th is in the bass and it has to resolve down by step, that will lead us to the third of the 1 chord, meaning that 5, 4, 2 will resolve to 1/6. That's something you're going to want to remember. 5, 2 has the 7th in the bass, and when the 7th resolves down by step, it takes you to 6. Now, every one of these inverted 5/7 chords moves from a complete 5/7 to a complete 1 chord. The issues of complete and incomplete only apply to root position 5/7 to 1. Also, every one of these has the same set of 4 melodies, just arranged in a different order. Everyone has the 7th resolving down, the leading tone resolving up, the common tone, and the 4th voice moving by step. That's it for resolving inverted 5/7 chords.